Hey everybody, this is Seth, and Becky and I are out on vacation this week, so here's a little something from the archives for you.
Check. 1, 2, 3.
The Debrief. This is the Debrief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's
arts and entertainment scene.
This is the Debrief.
Hello, and welcome to the Debrief. I am your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
I'm Becky Scarcello.
And sitting in for Jag this week, we have a very special guest. We have Steve Johnson of Motor City Brew Tours. Welcome.
Thanks for having me and saying my name right.
Hey, look at that. It's I mispronounce a lot of names on this show, but yours I can do.
Usually I get the company name said incorrectly.
Really? What do people say?
I don't know. They'll say Steve of Beer Tours or Steve of Motorbike Tours, and I'm like, oh my god,
it's not that hard.
It's Motor City Brew Tours. Yes, we do bike tours. I get it. It's not complicated.
Well, Jag,
I need it written out right back there too. If I had a banner, that would be ideal for every interview I ever do the rest of my life.
That's why we have a big banner here in the studio so that people can see. You're filling in for Jag because he is at the Podcast Movement Conference in Philadelphia this week. Yeah. I will be there later this week. We are glad that you are here to join us. We've established that none of the three of us are sports people, really.
However, except for cycling. So I think we have some good...
Yeah, we're all bike fans.
Just so that we're clear, I'm not a sports guy, but I do have 8 bikes in my garage. So let's be clear about that, okay?
So
I'm next to the man right now, so that I just need to say that to have a little cool factor thrown in here.
Because you run the bike and beer tours, the bike and brew
tours.
See, I knew I had to mispronounce something. I screwed it up. You just got a new bike for your birthday.
Yeah, my husband's a big cyclist. We love to ride our bikes.
I have moved to Detroit, and I have pimped my bike out with all the Detroitish lights and all the things. So, and I love biking as well. So we're all three of us very excited about our guest today.
Yeah, on the same page.
We have the executive director of the Detroit Fitness Foundation and the man behind the big Lexus Velodrome. You've seen this thing on I-75 by the side of the road, the big gray inflatable.
Right at Mac there.
Yeah, it's huge. You can't miss it. We have the man behind that, Dale Hughes. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Welcome, Dale.
I'm very glad to be here, guys, and young lady.
Thank you.
So let's talk about this velodrome because it hasn't been open this long, right? It's only been since January or so?
Yes, we had our first event was in January.
So for somebody who doesn't know what a velodrome is, and I got to be honest with you, I didn't before this thing came up. What happens inside that?
Well, even before I go there, you have to understand that most people don't even know what the word velodrome is.
Oh.
And velo is sort of a French word for bicycle.
Yeah.
So that's where the connection is. Most people, we've had people stop in and say, now, can I get my Lexus fixed here?
Oh, my gosh.
Do you have a rental car I can use? And I have to say, no, you have to go to Meade Lexus of Southfield or Lakeside or in Ann Arbor.
Oh, that's funny.
I got a plug in there, didn't I?
Yes, you
that
did.
was really good. Really good.
So what can you do inside that? Is building the right word? I don't even know.
Well, it's an air structure. It is actually held up by pressure, air pressure. It's sort of like a big balloon. Mm-hmm. Actually, sort of interesting from a construction point of view, most foundations, you put a foundation in to keep the building from sinking down. On an air structure, the foundation is actually the weight to keep the bubble from blowing away.
Right.
So it's sort of a different thing.
So similar to a soccer dome or a golf dome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of the air structures you see in the country around the world are really most of the time for soccer fields, football fields, golf domes, those kind of things.
All right.
Ours is totally different.
I was not good at
I did play soccer, by the way, too, Seth. So I was in lots of those structures. I just want to put that plug in for myself.
And I'm a soccer mom.
So what's keeping it? I don't get it. They're fans blowing? What is?
Yes, you have a blower that's actually outside, and it takes in exterior air and pumps in it. But once it gets inflated, most people are really blown away by how quickly this structure is big. We're 200 feet wide by 320 feet long. It's 6 stories tall, so it's about just over 60 feet tall. When it's the tarp is laying on the field, how long does it take to blow up? What would your guess be?
I wouldn't even know the unit that we're measuring this in. I mean, is it days or it's got to be hours?
Well, there's 64,000 square feet, and it actually inflates in an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, my God. That seems amazing to me.
I can't even blow up a balloon. So.
Wow.
So you asked, what do we have inside? We have what we call 3 fields of play. That's a field of play, sort of an Olympic term for what is the actual playing field that is inside. We have a 1/8 of a mile running track with 4 lanes. It's a flat concrete oval. It's named after Eddie Tolan, that in 1932 won 2 gold medals in the Olympic Games in running. In 1968, he was a school teacher, came back to Detroit, was a school teacher and a coach. And in 1968, the city of Detroit City Council renamed the park Tolan Playfield. So that's where we're located, right at Mack and I-75, right west of I-75, sort of kitty corner from Easter Market, if you sort of want to think of it that way. So inside we have 64,000 square feet. We have this 1/8 of a mile running track. Then we have a world-class velodrome, which is a cycling track. It's a steel frame with a wood surface, and people ride their bikes on it. I can go into that a little bit, but then our third field of play is we have a 1,200 square foot bamboo floor with the mirrors and everything for fitness classes. We call it Detroit Fit.
Gotcha. So, it's a velodrome, but it's more than just a velodrome. It serves other purposes
Yes,
as well.
it's a multi-purpose sports center. And then we also can use our facility for an event center. And we do have, and I can't unfortunately say who they are, but we've got 2 of the biggest sort of social events that the city has in the fall. Are going to be hosted at the velodrome. So it's going to be a really wonderful winter for us.
Wow.
Oh, we'll be reporting on that later.
I know. We'll have to know about that. Talk about the vision and bringing this, structure to life and what went into all of that.
Well, a gentleman who grew up in Detroit and the family made their money in the auto supply business. And then he moved away and lived in California, did some stuff with photography, and then moved to Colorado. And in Colorado, he started riding his bike and sort of fell in love with the sport. And about 5 years ago, he moved back to Detroit. And then one day I got a call.
He said it's cold out here.
I need a structure.
And he said, I want to give something back to the city of Detroit with a real focus on kids. So build me a velodrome. And my background is I started building velodromes when I was 25. And I built a portable one that I traveled around the country with. I could put it up in 24 hours, take it down in 9 hours. It fit in 3 semi-trucks, and we drove around the country putting on races. And in fact, in 1979, I got a call from Universal Studios to make a movie. And it was a remake of an old Shirley Temple movie called Little Miss Marker. And they were doing a national search for the new Shirley Temple. And I think they found this young lady, Sarah Cohen, I think her name was. Cute little thing. Great cast: Walter Matthau, Julie Andrews, Tony Curtis, Bob Newhart. So we took the track out there, and I took about 25 bike riders with me, and we shot the movie and thought it was going to be the greatest thing since sliced cheese and sliced bread, and we thought that was going to really make us, famous. Unfortunately, we were about a 1-minute scene in it, and the movie just didn't do very well. So that was it. And then came back to Detroit, and we had it stored in a place and trucked these. And this is sort of an unusual thing that I don't like to lay claim to this, but I'm the only person in the world that's ever had a velodrome stolen.
Wait!
Someone stole your velodrome.
How does that happen?
It was stored in 3 trailers, and we owned our own tractor, and that's what we used to drive out to California with. And we came back here to Detroit. We had it stored in a warehouse or yard over on the south side of Detroit. And trucked these, hot-wired our tractor, and drove off with the track.
Where do you put a stolen velodrome? How do you move
Well, we
that?
got the police to give us a helicopter ride looking for it. They said the area that we had stolen was a very high theft rate for tractor trailers. And I'm sure they were hoping to roll up those back doors and a bunch of, TVs were going to be in it.
Right.
When they rolled it up and just saw a whole lot of 2x4s and 4x4s and plywood. Schwinn was our sponsor back then, and we had Schwinn painted on the track. So I kept looking around and boarded up houses that said shh or win or something.
Right.
We had rumors from people telling us that it was in up north. It was in Colorado. We never found it.
Oh, wow.
So
how exactly does a person fall into building velodromes? I mean, that seems like an odd career. Are you a cyclist or?
No, I grew up and was raised in Highland Park. My parents then moved out to Rochester, which was pretty much farm community back then. This is the early 60s. Went to Rochester High School, Oakland University, worked in construction, didn't know what I wanted to do. My sister was going to school over in Germany to learn the German language as a German language teacher. It was her final year, and I visited her, sort of tooled around Europe there for a little bit, and saw a race in Nice, France. Came back and asked my dad if he could loan me some money because I thought I was going to open up a bike shop, and that's how I started. And then from there, I met a world-class coach based in Detroit, actually based in Royal Oak, who we had a velodrome at Mound and Outer Drive over Farwell Field, Derby Hill. Okay.
Yeah.
They also had a speed skating oval over there too. So back then, the sports were you rode your bike in the summer and you speed skated in the winter because you didn't have mountain bikes back then and those kind of things. After a couple years of being in the retail business, I met with Mike, and his name was Mike Walden, the world-class coach. And he produced 3 world champions, all women, who held the world championships for 10 years.
Wow.
And the first one was Sheila Young. She was sort of like the first Mark Spitz, and who's Michael Phelps. Mm-hmm. She won gold, silver, and bronze in speed skating, and then came back and was the world champion on the track for 3 years.
Wow.
So I met with him, and I said, hey, I'm not sure I want to stay in retail. What should I do? And he says, well, I'll make you a bike rider. And I said, well, I got this little ticker thing that ain't going to work, so tell me what else I can do. He says, well, build me a velodrome. So we sold our inventory.
Hey.
Sold our inventory.
Go to it.
My parents, I'm sure, were very distraught.
My parents were upset that I became a DJ. Mom, Dad, I'm going to build velodromes.
I think they were okay with the bike shop because that sounded like a real business.
Yeah.
But, Dad, you don't know what a velodrome is? No, son, I don't.
What's this newfangled thing?
But was it a thing back then? Were there a lot of velodromes? I mean,
No.
Is it common?
No, but we had this outdoor concrete velodrome at Mount Outer Drive, and on Tuesday nights was a training session. And when we were watching it, I was watching 3 world champions beat up on each other every Tuesday night. So it was very, very competitive, very exciting racing, and that really drove my interest. And
Gave the bug.
Gave me the bug. So then what I did was when he told me to do that, I met a couple other guys that had a bike shop themselves, and we sort of pooled all our money and we started building a track. But in doing that, I went down to the Detroit Library to look at the history of it because I'd heard some rumors that it was really big. And it was hard to believe because, like you said, it was not much of a sport. When I grew up, when I was 16 years old, it was, Dad, put the bike away and give me the keys to the car.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's why most people, that are middle-aged and old like I am, that's the way they were brought up. So I looked in the newspapers, and I was blown away by going into the New York papers, Chicago papers, Boston papers, Montreal, Toronto papers, and seeing that I would read about track racing, velodrome racing, in 2 different areas in every newspaper. I'd read about it in the sports pages, and they would report on who won and who did battle against the other. But especially in New York, you'd read about it in the society pages. Because the races they would have in Madison Square Gardens would be 6 days, go 24 hours. So all the people on Broadway, after they were wired from their shows at midnight and done, they didn't want to go to bed right away.
Oh, wow.
So the infield of these places, of the velodrome, was really a huge party. They'd be drinking. Al Capone was there in Chicago. He'd be throwing out $100 bills to the next 2 riders who would sprint and who would ever win.
Oh my gosh.
So you'd read about it. Ernest Hemingway had a quote that said, "It was the one thing I could never write about because I never felt I could do it justice." And I said to myself, doggone it, Ernest, why didn't you gosh darn write about it,
Info.
It would really help me now. But you'd read about it. Jimmy Durante, the famous comedian. I mean, all these names I can come up with, but I'm not sure anybody in your podcast will be old enough to remember them.
Yes.
No.
They will.
Emily T. Gale is definitely.
Yes,
she's like, yep.
Yeah.
So
but it was kind of like people maybe going to the horse track or that kind of thing.
It was a thing, and there was betting on it.
Yeah.
In fact, in the movie, Walter Matthau, the movie, was a bookie. And that's what happened is the little girl was left as a marker for a bet. And then then jumped off a bridge because he lost. And he was left with this little girl. And, of course, Julie Andrews didn't like how he was taking this little girl to all the betting houses and everything. So that was the story. So, again, you have to sort of think about transportation and where we are at. And where we were back then. In the 1880s, the horse was transportation. And then in the cities, it was difficult. You had to feed it, you had to clean up after it, you had to board it. And so then when the normal kind of a bicycle, they call it the ordinary because both wheels were the same. If you remember, there was a time when you saw the big high wheelers, which is that huge big wheel.
Oh, sure.
Okay, but because that was like your tricycle. There was no gear. It was you pedaled one revolution. That's why the wheel was so big.
Oh my gosh.
So then they came in. The ordinary bikes were the same size wheels and they had gears. So people started riding their bikes. In New York City, there was 150 bike shops in Manhattan. Between New York and Boston, there was 100 velodromes that would routinely get 20 and 30,000 spectators watching the bike
100
racing.
between New York and Boston.
Between New York and Boston. So
it's a big thing.
So then they raced outdoors, so then they wanted to go indoors. And then that's where they went into Madison Square Gardens.
Sure.
And, if you want to win a bet with somebody who thinks they know everything about sports, ask them what the two sports that all the original National Hockey League buildings were architecturally designed for.
Hold on. I'm writing this down. Hopefully
Okay.
Jag's not listening.
I know.
So we can find out. What did you say that again?
Well, the two sports that all the original National Hockey League buildings were architecturally designed for. In other words, the buildings were actually designed to make sure that they would best accommodate two sports, and those two sports were hockey. The size of the ice rink had to be, the size that was going to work for them, and all the seats would fit for it. And then the velodrome. Well, in a velodrome, you have your straightaways that are generally banked about 10 to 15 degrees. But the turns are banked somewhere in the 40 to 50 degree range. So all the aisles of Madison Square Gardens and Olympia Stadium,
I was going to
too,
say Olympia was okay. Yeah.
were
Original
designed.
6.
So what you have is in the straightaway, all the aisles sort of curved upwards as it went into the turn. And the seats on the ends of the turns were so steep that the rows of seats for spectators were so steep so that they could see down the steepness of the track that they literally had guardrails in front of every row of seats.
Yeah.
So, in fact, in 1927 is when Olympia Stadium was built. The third event they had was a 6-day bike race, and 40,000 Detroiters went to the bike races to see the races.
Wow, there's got to be some photos of that.
Oh, yes. We've got a big mural showing an actual blow-up of Olympia Stadium with an actual ticket.
Nice.
So you can see. So then what happened is by the time it was a very, like I said, the 6-day races is what they call them, and they'd race for 6 days. First, it was 6 days and 24 hours. Then in 1899, the government, New York's laws came in and said this is inhumane. So the promoter said, we're going to put two riders together as a team, like a relay race. And that event, to this day, is called the Madison. A lot of Europeans call it the American. But the Madison is going to be, although velodrome racing has been in the Olympic Games for almost from the modern Olympics, the game one of the games we play is called the Madison, and it's going to be in the 2020 Olympic Games in Japan.
Wow.
So, and our track in the Lexus Velodrome is actually a 6-day Madison kind of a track. For people that are in the NASCAR racing, you have your different sizes of tracks. You have Talladega, and you have the one down in Florida. It's skipping my mind here for a second. Daytona. Are very big tracks. So that's sort of like the Olympic size, the Olympic size is 250 meters, which is about a fifth of a mile. Our track is more like Bristol, which is the smaller racetrack in the NASCAR, which is very much more exciting, actually.
Yeah, I've actually been there before. That is a fun track to see live.
Yes.
Okay.
So our track is more of a Bristol as opposed to an Olympic size, which is more like the Talladega.
Okay.
So that's the sort of the history.
So I can't imagine why they tapped you to build this thing, because clearly you really don't have a background.
Can I ask a question? Because you mentioned the Olympics, and this was a rumor that I heard. Actually, I first heard it from Bailey Sissoyisgro of Detroit History Tours, who said that she thought one of the reasons that they were putting a velodrome here was because the city was preparing to make a bid for the Olympics. Could that happen with this velodrome? Is this?
No, it wouldn't. We wouldn't be able to use this velodrome for the Olympic Games. It would have to be a larger size velodrome.
Okay.
It'd have to be 250. Detroit has actually put together packages for the Olympic Games a few times.
Yes.
I think that we're still ways off.
I agree.
And I think there's so much cost now to the whole city that it used to be something.
Some cities.
It used to be something that would really, like it did in L.A. It made a major difference in L.A. Really revitalized L.A. But now you're getting cities that are having to spend so much money in infrastructure and everything.
Yeah.
But Detroit actually has a lot of those infrastructure things. Like we have a lot of stadiums. We've got, because we've got all the pro sports. But I don't think we'll see Olympics in my lifetime.
So talk about what is happening there. Talk about the summer programs, and then let's also talk about some of the fall programs that are coming up.
Well, again, we have things that for runners, we have things for walkers, for inline skaters, for fitness center people. But the cycling aspect is obviously my passion.
Sure.
So right now we're focusing in our whole summer youth cycling camps. We're having to expand it. We had 8 weeks of them. We have 8 weeks, so we're about halfway through the 8 weeks, but the demand, and we have a waiting list now. So we're adding a ninth week to it. We have kids that are 3 to 6 year olds. We're teaching 3 to 6 year olds how to ride a bike.
Wow.
How great is that?
That is awesome.
And now you use balance bikes. You don't use training wheels anymore. Because
what's a balance bike?
balance bike looks like a little bike, but it doesn't have any
Those
pedals.
are pedals.
Oh, I've seen
pedals.
these.
Yeah.
Yes.
just-
I'm sure you've seen them.
Yeah.
Because the key is we think about you got to learn how to pedal, but you really don't have to learn how to pedal. What you have to
No.
learn how to do is how to balance on the bike.
Exactly.
So we have 3 to 6 year olds that are learning how to ride a bike.
That's awesome.
And it's pretty rewarding when you see some little kid all of a sudden see a big smile that they're being hauling down the road there, going at a pretty clip without having to do too much
Yeah,
effort.
I remember when my younger son learned to ride a bike, and we're out on the street in the front of our house, and he was so happy, but it was such an emotional thing that he ran in the house and just broke down in tears. Like, oh, I finally did it.
Well, I think the hardest, the nicest thing about the balance bikes is the kids can sort of learn on their own. I had 3 boys.
You have to hold them.
When you have to put your hand in that saddle and run
It's
after
a
them, let me
backbreaker.
tell you,
that's hard.
It is.
it's fatiguing, and
Yes.
you come out exhausted. So
I would happily send my kids.
So for 3 to 6 year olds, we're teaching them how to ride a bike. And generally some of those already know how. But then we have a 6 to 11 year olds. On the velodrome, you have what we call the apron. It's called the safety zone technically, but it's sort of like the entrance ramp to get onto the cycling track itself, the steep part. So that's banked at a nice constant 15 degrees. So we teach 6 to 11 year olds how to ride a fixed gear bike. Now, we haven't talked about that. The bikes that you ride on a track are different than you would ride on the road. It looks like a road bike with the skinny tires and the drop funny handlebars, but it has no brakes. And it only has a single gear in the back, not like 10 or 20, just a single gear. But the most important thing is that if the wheel is moving, the pedals are moving, so it's a direct drive. So there's 3 things you can do with your feet. You can push on the pedals, easy, medium, or hard. You can't coast, okay?
It would just stop. Yeah.
The pedals always go around. But what you can do is what we call floating, where you totally relax your legs and just let the pedals take your feet around. Okay. In that instance, you're actually getting a massage because you're not asking your muscles to do any work, but you're cleaning them out. Just a little another fact is if you watch the Tour de France is now on TV.
Oh, yeah.
And if you watch the pro riders, they're on the bike for 4 to 6 hours and going at incredible speeds and climbing hills. They hardly ever stop pedaling.
Correct.
They do what we call soft pedaling. After a hard effort, they will just sort of keep their legs going around because they're trying to clean out all the lactic acid that's been built up. On a track bike, you can totally relax and just let the pedals actually take your feet around, so you're actually getting a massage. Of course, then the third thing you can do is how you control it is that you can now resist the pedals. In other words, fight the pedals from going around. You can't stop them, but you can slow them down. So I tell new riders that most new riders, when they ride and when they're riding a bike, they have what I call an on-off switch for their power. Their power is either powering hard or they're coasting, or they're powering hard and they're coasting. very inefficient. So one of the things that a track bike and a fixed gear bike will help you with is become much more efficient because you can just slightly increase your power or slightly decrease your power. So you become much more efficient.
I feel like I would have to relearn how to ride a bike. I mean, I feel like it would be completely different.
It's a different way of thinking of it, for sure.
Yeah. So then once kids learn how to do this, then are there open times that they can ride?
Oh, yeah.
Like a membership? And,
we want to move our kids up.
Yeah.
Well, our youngest rider on the cycling track itself, and again, it's 50 degrees, so that's more than halfway to straight up. 45 is halfway to straight up. We have our youngest rider has been 6 years old. We've got a couple 6 and 7-year-olds that ride this track.
Amazing.
You've got to go about 15 or 16 miles an hour to stay on the track. Otherwise,
you're going to fall.
You're going to slide down. It's what I call a self-cleaning track. Anything happens is sliding down.
Yes.
Our oldest riders are in their 80s. We have an 80-year-old and an 85-year-old that rides on a regular basis. So, I think all of you here are somewhere in that age group, right?
8 to 85, yeah, pretty much.
So, we have, different kind of programs, but we want to, the ultimate goal, our mission statement is to provide fitness and sporting opportunities for area residents with a focus on youth and seniors. So all our junior programs, 17 and under, are free.
Wow.
We have free senior walking programs. And then we have pretty nominal fees for people who, want to participate in the different things. Our fitness center, it's a drop-in fee is $2. So you can do a fitness workout for $2. You can come and do the inline skating for a $5 drop-in fee. So we're really trying to be it so that we can encourage people to get fit,
get moving. Yeah.
And we've been pretty busy in the wintertime. We're real busy. In the summertime, a little bit less busy because obviously people can be outdoors, and that's why we've been focusing this summer on our youth program. And our goal is to get everybody more active. With the advent of all technologies, I think kids are maybe less active now than they have been in the past. So the idea is to try to encourage them and teach those that don't know. I had a rewarding day last week. We had a young man that brought in 2 of his cousins or so, young cousins or so, to learn how to ride a bike. So we taught this 3-year-old how to ride a bike. And he came up to me and said, "You know what? I don't know how to ride a bike. I'm 23." And I says, "Well, hey, okay, let's cut this barrier. Let's get you on a bike." We took off the pedals of a regular bike and we taught him how that they learn their balance. And an hour or so later, he's riding a bike.
That's empowering.
Oh, that's really neat.
Really
from 3 to 23. That's
yeah. You're talking not only physical health but mental health.
Right.
Yeah, big time.
I'm sure that was he had to have a little bit of guts to bring his 2 cousins that didn't know how to ride a bike, and yet he in the back of his mind knowing that he didn't ride a bike, but that's probably why he brought them.
Yeah.
He didn't want them to have that
grow up to
the same feeling. So our part of our goal is to get kids to get better, to get fitter, to learn how to start racing. Then they're going to start racing against our local riders. Then I'm going to bring riders in from around the country that they can compete against. This winter we'll be bringing in riders from around the world to compete with. So the idea is to keep their new riders, another challenge. And
the bikes are just there for
we have
use.
we have about 60 adult bikes and about 20 kids bikes.
They're ready. Wow.
Can you BYOB?
We are going after our own liquor license.
No.
BYO
You know what's on my bike.
I know. You're like, get me out of here. I need a beer.
No, can you bring your own bike, or do you use one of the bikes because they're bikes with no brakes and
right?
Special?
They're track bikes. If you have your own track bike, then
is one of your 8 bikes a track bike?
No, I don't have a track bike.
Oh, you need a 9th bike.
Yeah, if my wife's listening
Yes,
now, I'm definitely on a bike lockdown right now.
Well,
So
maybe a Christmas gift.
yeah,
Because it's actually been surprising to me how much biking has come up on this podcast, because it does seem like a topic, and not intentionally, but it's a topic that we've returned to a number of times. I mean, even last week we interviewed Aaron Foley, and he was talking about how he's the chief storyteller for the city of Detroit, and he said, "I didn't realize what a big deal bike lanes were until I joined the city government." What is the state of bike culture here in the city of Detroit?
Well, you talk about the bike lanes and bike paths and everything. Last year, Detroit was something like 94th in the list of cities of how many miles of bike paths and trails that we had in the city proper. By the time they complete it this summer, we will jump all the way up to number 4.
Wow.
Whoa.
So we will have a lot of bike paths. Now, the part of the reason is you have streets like Jefferson
Yes.
and Gratiot that are really, multi-lanes that at one time, before the expressways, was the main road. Well, we didn't maybe need, 4 lanes each way going
No.
down Jefferson.
Right, they need a road diet.
So,
Yeah.
so
It
the
just caused people
idea,
to speed.
it was a little bit easier for us. You take a place like San Francisco. Well,
They don't have room.
where are they going to put a bike lane when they can barely, have room for their cars?
Right.
So, the bike, if you go back, the running craze happened in the late '60s. And then a lot of people blew their knees out. And the 70s is when the bike boom hit, the first bike boom. And Schwinn couldn't build enough bikes. Most of the bike shops would have a container come in and have 300 bikes in the container. And every one of those bikes were already pre-sold.
Wow.
That was in the mid-70s. So it started to come on the scene a little bit that was thought of as a sport. Greg LeMond won the Tour de France a few times. That sort of gave us that it was a real sport. Lance won some more. Of
Sure.
course, whether you like that or the way he did it or not is a different story.
I did see Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France when we lived in Switzerland, and we went and saw, and it's amazing because you see for 2 seconds, like, wait, did I just see that? They're gone.
And you had to get there 6 hours before
Exactly.
to be able to see it.
Exactly.
But I would definitely suggest to people, if they've never been to either Giro d'Italia in
Yes.
Italy or the Vuelta, which is the Spain's Tour de Spain,
Yeah.
or the Tour de France, to go see one
It's
because
amazing.
it is a fun time.
It really is,
You
and there's a whole parades around it and whole celebrations,
get
and people are crazy.
You get some wine and loaves of bread, and you sit on
Yeah.
the side of the hill, and
Yep.
you enjoy the terrain, and then all of a sudden you see this bike race goes by, and
Yeah.
it's there for a second. You're right.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's such a wonderful thing for spectators on a velodrome, because all the action plays out right
in front of you. That's true.
We have suites that are right on adjacent to the infield fence. You're literally 10 feet away from 12 to 15 riders doing 35 to 45 miles an hour.
Something.
You are, Howard Cosell used to have a terminology, he says, up close and personal. When you come to our velodrome, the Lexus Velodrome, and you see the racing, you are really up close and personal to the action. And it's
Yeah, and
very
I'll tell
exciting.
you, like seeing the Tour de France on TV and then versus in person, you can't appreciate it till they're right in front of your face.
So let me ask a novice question. What are the different races when you're talking about indoor biking?
Well, it's sort of like track and field. There's a lot of games. We call our big races the championship games because there are different kinds of games you can play. One of the ones that most people would see in the Olympic Games that they show, because we don't have any athletes that do that well in the sport, so the American TV doesn't spend much time showing velodrome racing.
Yeah.
But the one sport that you would see is what's called match sprinting, which is just 2 riders who only do 3 laps on the track. And really the first lap and a half usually is at literally walking pace, because it's all about positioning. Because drafting is super important in cycling and in track racing, just like it is in NASCAR.
Sure.
When you ride behind somebody, you're doing 30% less effort. So, you see lots of times where you see the husband, who this good, strong guy, and he makes his wife rides in front of him, and I'm saying, man alive, you got it backwards, mister.
Yeah.
But the problem is the guy gets in front and just hammers off the front. But if he rides at a pace that is 30% more than what she can handle, if she learns how to draft, she can stay on his wheel without any more effort.
So how can we get my wife to do that with
Yes.
us more? Because she leads most of the time when we ride, because she gets irritated when I'm going too fast.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a constant problem, and she doesn't like to ride. She's not comfortable riding close enough to draft.
Oh,
I know
I think you're going to run in. She's going to run into you or something.
That's how
She's
she feels,
Thinking,
but-
yeah.
Everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's no
I
doubt
totally
about it.
agree. I'd love to have that. Love to take her to like a training class. on that.
But if I understand this positioning correctly, what you're saying is you want to be in second place for the beginning of the race.
Well, again, because of drafting, nobody wants to be in the front for very long
Exactly.
because they're
It's tiring.
expending 30% more effort than everybody else behind them.
Right.
Right.
So in a track racing, the guy in front usually doesn't do much more than a half of a lap or even a quarter of a lap. Now, where does he want to be when it comes down to the final lap or so is another story. And obviously, everybody is looking to try to be in the right position for that final lap or two.
Right.
So it is a very fun thing to watch because there's different games we play. We mentioned match sprinting is one of them. Probably the most the easiest for a new fan to understand and the one that they like the most is called the elimination race. It used to be called the missing out, and in Europe they call it the devil take the hindmost. And literally, we usually start with about 12 to 15 riders. They'll do 3 or 4 laps, 5 laps to sort of get warmed up and sort of get going. Then we'll ring the bell, and next time around, the last person that comes across the line, his rear wheel comes across the line, whoever that is gets eliminated from the race. And so every other lap, you have one less rider on the track. So you can start to see how guys are positioning or women are positioning themselves in the race and where they are trying to be at certain times because every lap the guys in front know they're safe, but the guys in back are all trying to sprint over them.
To not be the last. Yeah.
Then it comes down to the last 2 riders, and we give them 2 laps to go, and then it's sort of like a match sprint. My most favorite race is called the Madison because it was invented in Madison Square Gardens in 1899. It's a relay race. You might have seen in the last Winter Olympic Games in speed skating, in the short track, they do a version of it. In fact, they took the Madison and modified it for short track speed skating. They'd have 2 skaters. One circles sort of in the infield, going slow, and one's on the outside of the skating lane. He's going fast, or she's going fast, and then the second one skates up in front of him, and the one that's going fast then pushes him. So that's what they do. The Madison sort of works the same thing. It's 2 riders on a team. There'll be 6 to 8 to 12 teams on the track, depending on the event. 1 rider from each team is racing down at the bottom of the track because that's the shortest distance. And each of them have a partner that's riding about the halfway point. And the one at the bottom is doing 30 to 35 miles an hour. And the guy at the top is doing 15 miles an hour. And the guy at the top will drop down. The guy that's going 30 will come up alongside him. They'll grab each other's hands. And the guy who's going 30 miles an hour will sling the guy that's doing 15 so that instantly he's up to 30 miles an hour or 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's what you got to get your wife to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, my wife has definitely seen that because we've been out to Bloomer a whole bunch of times.
Yes.
And she is not interested in doing that. I can guarantee it. Now, I am. It sounds awesome. I've had some friends that have done it before. So,
well, here's what I advise.
cool.
Here's what I advise you to do for your wife, and you get a new bike out of it.
I'm all ears.
Sign him up.
Buy a tandem.
Yeah, she's not going to do that either. So no, we have a couple friends that are tandem riders that we ride with in clubs. Rochester Mills Beer Club Bike Club, right?
Oh, yeah.
They have a whole bunch of tandem folks in there that we're all friends with, and
Well, I can see she probably doesn't want to look at your back end for all that time.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know though. This time of year with the amount of miles I'm putting on, this is about as good as I look. So.
Well, if somebody wants to come experience the Velodrome for the first time, I mean, what would you say to somebody who's new to it, and what's the
How they approach it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we'd invite everybody just to come down and do a tour of their place because when you walk in, you're pretty blown away. Most everybody is, oh my gosh, what is this thing? And then they go down underneath the tunnel and up into the infield, and it unfolds in front of you. And 50 degrees, you sort of can't visualize what that is, but when you see this track, it really blows people away. So we certainly invite everybody to come down anytime between 8 in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, pretty much Monday through Friday and Saturday. They can just stop in and take a look at it. Now, if they want to start riding, they have to take what we call Class 101. Class 101 costs $30 and $10 to rent the bike. There's a $5 discount for each if you're a resident of Detroit. You come in, and it's about an hour and a half program. We talk to you, we get you up on the track, we bring you down, we talk to you, get you back up on the track, we talk to you, get you up on the track. Usually we try to get everybody up at least 3 different times. That's sort of like a bucket list thing. For some people, they just wanted to be able to say, I did it.
Yeah.
And for other people, it's sort of like their first intro.
Springboard.
And then they have to decide if they want to sort of be part of the whole family. And you can get a 6-month pass for $45 a month or a 1-year pass for $30 a month. And then the bike rental only goes down to $5 each time. We encourage people not to buy their bikes right away to make sure that this is what they want to do. You can buy a good track bike, and this might sound expensive, but most track bikes, entry-level track bikes that are good, are going to cost you just under $1,000. But the thing about it is, you really, they don't get beat up on the road, or rims don't get beat up by the chuck holes or anything like that. So even if you only do it for a year or so, you probably can sell that same $1,000 bike for $700. So it's really not much of a risk, as put it that way.
So I love biking, and I bike outside in the summer. I'm from California, where you can bike year-round, and you can't do that here. Meanwhile, I've got a Planet Fitness is just sucking $10 a month, and I haven't been into that thing in like a year and a half.
I got one of those too.
I'm thinking this might be the way to go, because in the especially in the winter months when it gets cold, I would love to be biking.
Plus you've got these other fitness classes there.
Right, we got the fitness classes, running. We also have an area with some free weights. So you can get yourself a good workout.
Cross train.
But of course, the cycling side is what the feature aspect of the whole facility is. And then you want to come and see some races. Our next race, our final race of the summer, is August 4th, Saturday night, August 4th. It's 7:30 at night. Doors open at 6. Tickets are $10 for general admission, $15 if you want a seat. We have suites that include 10 tickets, and that a suite costs $150. And
that's like debrief outing.
Yeah. So we have people having birthday parties there. We're having wedding reception, after reception parties coming out. So people are having a fun time. The thing about it is, you can go to a lot of bars, and there's a new bar seemingly opening up in Detroit about every day, it seems like. But we talk to the young people, and they talk about, well, you go to a bar, and after a while, every bar is a stool or a booth, and you're watching a TV or something. Right. We can provide entertainment. We've got racing going on. We've got action going on, and it's fun. So I invite people out. Our winter season is going to be really where what we consider everything we've done this whole summer and a little bit of winter that we were in is sort of our soft opening. We really look for our grand opening kind of a year starting in September.
Oh, okay.
And we're starting with a 3-day race. It's called the Lexus Oktoberfest, because we will have our liquor license there, so we will be selling beer and wine and drinks.
Your ears just perked
I just got way more interested in it.
Bikes and beer?
Yeah.
Do you have food as well?
Well, we don't have a kitchen.
Okay.
But we'll be working with different caterers and different people right now who've been going and bringing in their pizzas and bringing in their hors d'oeuvres. And this summer we haven't been checking bags, if you know what I mean. So it's sort of like a little bit of a tailgating kind of a thing.
Yeah.
People are having a good time.
That's awesome.
But this winter we're going to have some big time races. We've got 8 major championship races over from September to April. And we'll be giving away over $100,000 in prizes to riders.
Wow.
We even prize our junior riders. So our junior riders are racing. I look at it as a point of view as incentive. And I say, okay, I can incentivize this young person to say, cut my grass and I'll give you $20. And you're going to have to sweat a little bit to get that $20. And I say, now, wouldn't you much rather be riding a bike and maybe you'd have to sweat a little bit to get good, and make $20?
Yeah.
So we took 8 kids out to the national championships this year already, just last week. 4 of them being Detroiters. And we had a silver medal. We got 2 bronze. We got 2 fourth places. And most all our kids placed in the top 50% of the field. For me, the most important thing was not so much how well they did, but how they came back and how motivated they were going to be. And they are super motivated. They now, being the big fish in a little pond is one thing, but now you go to the nationals and now you're in the big pond and you see what it's going to take. So awesome. I'm very excited for this winter to happen because I think next year we're going to be probably not taking 8 juniors to nationals. I think we're going to have the largest junior field of riders in the country going to nationals. And I'll be surprised if I don't have 25 or 30 kids going.
Really?
That's awesome.
And do you have swanky jerseys and they're all kitted out?
We are. In fact, our kits are coming in. We have 3 major sponsors, Lexus, of course. We have Diversified Media Credit Union is our financial sponsor, and DMC Medical Center. So we have 3 kits. We're looking for 3 other major sponsors so that we have 6 major sponsors, and we're going to create 6 teams. And each team is going to have an elite rider all the way down to the junior young riders, all the way down to the 3-year-olds. So we'll have full kits for them, the jerseys, shorts, socks, gloves, the whole thing. So it's going to be fun.
That's awesome. Well, Dale Hughes, Executive Director of the Detroit Fitness Foundation, and the guy behind the Velodrome. And by the way, if anybody out there listening stole a Velodrome, you can call anonymously. This is happening. This is happening with the train station. It might happen here.
Yeah, someone's got it in there.
You might get a call.
Hangar.
Yes. You know what? I've built them for the Olympic Games in Atlanta, for the Asian Games in Korea, the Asian Games in Qatar, Commonwealth Games in India. I just finished one in Tel Aviv, and I just finished one in Peru. But you know what? When I tell people I had one stolen, that usually is the one that makes them most saying, what is this guy up to?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Can't live that down.
I can't live that one down.
And of course, people can go see it, and you can find out all the details on the web, too, LexusVelodrome.com. Dale Hughes, thank you so much.
Fascinating. Learned so much,
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.